recording. Wonderful. So then let me share my screen. And all right, so here I am. I'm logged in as a pretend teacher. This is my warning to connect to Google Classroom before you assign everything. So I actually but while I was waiting for people, I went ahead and I connected my Google Classroom, but now I would need to go in and just save these. So that's my first period class. So I would want to save it to my first period class. So I can actually go do it retroactively. It just takes longer if I do it retroactively. So, okay. So, and then this means it went to Google Classroom as a draft, and this would mean, nope, it didn't. So, so this is my playing around Google Classroom or Inq-ITS that is integrated with Google Classroom. And then let me just go through some information I would love for you to have as the teacher. So first things first, here are the tutorials. These are free for all teachers. Every teacher on the planet can use all of the tutorials for free. We have some teachers who've just been using only our free account for years. And they can, they could spread these tutorials throughout the school year. And each of these are one individual investigation. These are qualitative labs, so very, very simple. And these are quantitative labs, so just a little tougher. Would you prefer to explore qualitative or quantitative?
Probably quantitative because it's
okay.
A little bit more difficult to do online.
Yep. I'm going to keep it as a draft. This is my thing, but I prefer to just keep things as a draft in Google Classroom because I always want to go in and type my own directions to students.
Right.
So I'm going to hop over here to Google Classroom now because this is now over there. So I'm going to hop into my first period class. And then looks like I assigned that one before. Nope. Okay. So here's my first period class and I can grab it. Let me edit this. So this is where I want to assign, I might even, first period virtual lab, I might want to tell them kind of more what it is. And then I want to say in here, I want to let my students know a few things up front. And I say this from experience with my own students. You want to let them know that they will be able to see all of their work when they're done. Our system will score their work. They will be able to see the scores for their work. You'll be able to see their work. You'll be able to see scores for their work. And I would just tell my students that I expect them to upload and attach the PDF of their lab when they're done. And they cannot actually mark this as done until they can upload that. So that was my biggest issue in the spring was number one, students who forgot to authenticate with Google. They forgot to press the little Google button when they created their account. And then the second major issue was the kids who marked done without creating an account. So telling them you have to actually
these little things. Okay.
Yeah. And then obviously all that other Google Classroom stuff. And then there's a couple of things I'm going to show you before I show you what things look like from a student. I want to make sure you know how to set yourself up for success here. So a couple of things are really helpful before you send an assignment to students. If you click on reports, there are 2 rubrics that are really, really helpful down here. And I'm just going to go ahead and add these. I just know from experience, just the whole world is better if kids have a rubric and they know what they're supposed to be doing. And so I'm just going to add those in here. And then if you want to give your students a chance to reflect and possibly improve their scores, you could add a Google Doc in here that just basically is, giving each student a copy of it. That's like a reflection. The score I earned was, and what I would do to improve, or because that's what I did. The score I earned was because I and then I would improve by, and then just giving them a chance to reflect. Because particularly with the first few assignments, their scores are rather low, and it's nice for them to have a chance to reflect on that.
Is that something that you developed yourself, or is that something that like is on here?
Yeah. So, the reflection document.
Yeah.
I developed it myself, and I would say that there was nothing fantastically beautiful about it. You know, just like very, very brief Google Doc. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
If it was pretty, I would share it.
It's
but
fine. No, I just want to make sure.
Yeah. So then, okay. So from here, I want to show you what it's like if a student clicks on this link in Google Classroom. So for right now, I need you to pretend that we've assigned this, we've put in a due date, and now the student is going to click on the link. So I have to actually, because I'm logged into our system in Chrome, I have to actually switch to Firefox so I can pretend to be a student for you, because I want to show you. This is what a student would see. So let's pretend a student just clicked on the link from Google Classroom. This is what they see. And we want to tell them to make a new account. They're going to see your name. If you feel like your students are going to need an awful lot of hand-holding, you could totally do this too. Like you could have this pretend student, right? Like you could do this. You really, really, really want them to sign in with Google. I wish I could like put neon lights around this one. But I'm just going to show you what it looks like if they don't. If they don't, they're going to come over here and they're going to do this process, which if they clicked on Google, they don't go through this. And then they're going to create an account. And then see, because we can't have any private information for students, we have really strict privacy because we're in multiple nations around the world and all 50 states. And so to be really, really careful about student privacy. So their usernames are the first two letters of their first name, their entire last name, and a random animal. And so if students don't click Google, that's what we do for them. And so it can be really difficult for them to get back in a second time if they did that and then forget that they did that. So you can look up their usernames in your students tab, and you can change your password if you need, if they're their password if you need to. And then once they use their username and password to get in, they can go to their settings at any time. And actually, if they wanted to, they could be connected to Google and to Clever both at the same time. And then once they do that, there's a little G that pops up. But anyway, it's just helpful to know that in case someone forgets. So, okay, let's go ahead and see what it looks like from the student perspective. I found it really helpful to walk my students through this so that they know they're going to see a goal, they're going to see a hypothesis. An independent variable is what I will change. A dependent variable is what will happen. And if you use different vocabulary, that's obviously really helpful. They have the ability to manipulate all of these possible independent variables. They can change them, and they can get their data in a data table, and then they make a claim. So a lot of times they get to the data section, they're like, oh, my hypothesis was wrong, I want to change it. And it's like, oh, no, we give you a chance after you collect data to basically revise your hypothesis in your claim section and say, this data supports my claim, and now I want to change that. And then they type it all up in a claim evidence reasoning fashion. And these are auto-scored for you, even with our free labs. We're auto-scoring that student writing. So really helpful for students. And they should know that they'll be able to see their scores on their student writing when they're done. You can talk to them about the lab. And then I found it helpful for this first one to have students actually write this out. So the first lab, I had students write out, like draw out, what does height of the tower look like? So you're going to get to choose. Do you want to increase that or decrease that? And then, okay, height of the tower. And then I had them draw total distance traveled. That's a really weird term. Can you draw to me? What does that look like to you? And then total distance traveled. Okay, so now draw this out for me. What do you think is going to happen? And I actually had them like increase, big green arrow up, decrease, big red arrow down. And then, okay. And then move on. The big thing is for this first tutorial, this is a pure assessment. So if they make an untestable hypothesis, they're stuck with it through the end. And so I found like a lot of hand holding at that beginning of the hypothesis really helped my students to do a lot better. And so then it almost turns into like an assessment of their listening skills. But I mean, it was really good for me to know right away, like these are the kids that, you know, when I'm helping them, they'll listen and they'll learn. And these are the kids who I'm going to need to think of some new tactics. And so this one is a pure total assessment. So we are not going to stop them. So if they go crazy and they start marking whatever, like there's nothing in here to stop them at all. And so they can absolutely, I mean, they can go as bonkers as they want to, changing all of the variables, going nuts. And we're just going to let that happen, you know, because we're just like, okay, this is your chance to play around. And quite honestly, I found like at the beginning of the school year, my students needed that. My students needed to just be able to play around as much as possible and learn from the experience rather than having, we have a little tutor that I'll show you in the next activity. We have a little tutor that'll pop up. But I found that at the beginning of the school year, it was better for my students to just kind of get this out of their system and not have him pop up. So this is the point when they can say, what happened, total distance traveled, then, and they always want to say it stayed the same because they never want to say it didn't support my hypothesis. But obviously, you know, a good scientist learns from their data, right? Like if a scientist has a research study to study a drug and they discover that that drug is super dangerous, like we don't want them to just throw their research out. We want them to say, hey, it was super dangerous. These are the trials that support my hypothesis. And I would, you know, here's my new claim. And so we need students to know they can get 100% even by saying that it refuted their hypothesis. But I'm going to leave this like most students do. And then students tend to do one of two things. They usually want to select all of the trials or they want to select one. And obviously it's a bit of work to help students get to the point where they only select the trials, where the only thing they changed was just the independent variable that they said they were going to change. And they don't seem to notice that they changed multiple things there. So I think I'm going to leave this as like a kiddo would do it because I want my score to be consistent. So then they come here and they type up their claim, evidence, reasoning. But I don't want you to be tortured right now. So, okay, so let's move on really quickly. When they're done, they actually see this. So I talked to one teacher who said that she made her kids do like a screenshot and upload this. Like, if you don't have that done, you're not done yet. And then they can see their progress right away. So they can see how they did. So all of them, if you're helping them on this first one, they should all have 3 dark blue for their hypothesis. And then, you know, then they can see their other scores. And then here's the work that they can upload to Google Classroom to say that they're done. Sometimes I even had them graph, like, you know, choose which trials they wanted to graph. And then it was almost like I was checking them again to see if they were paying attention to their independent variable and their dependent variable when they were graphing, because I was really amazed at how many kids would like start to do really perfect the whole way through. But then I would ask them to graph and they would do a great job in the system. But then instead of choosing height of the tower, they would like graph roughness of the ramp and, you know, time. I'm like, that was neither your independent variable nor your dependent variable. Like, and so it was just like another check and practice, right? Because doing that lab that we just did, that's an entire investigation in 15 minutes. And then if they do a reflection and they graph, it makes it take a little bit longer. But if we're doing a hands-on lab, like if I was actually having kids do this, first of all, I couldn't give them all of these different choices or it would take 2 weeks. And if I was giving them, you know, here's your independent variable, here's your dependent variable, it would still take multiple days. We wouldn't be able to finish it in 2 weeks. And so I found that like doing these labs gave the students lots of practice, and then they feel ready. Like I would feel pretty confident that a student at this point could, you know, especially if they do 3 of these, because there are 3 tutorials, if they need to, they could do 3. I'd feel pretty confident in my students being able to figure out how to make a lab at home around this same topic, you know, whether like, you know, build a tower out of whatever you want. Like you need to have one independent variable you're testing and then one thing you're measuring. And I would feel pretty confident in them to do that. But it's really nice for them to be able to see how they did and then talk about how they would improve their scores. And that's about it for the students. So let's hop back over to my teacher account where I can show you. Okay. So I'm here and my student just, let me refresh so we can see what happened. So my first period kiddo, he just did that lab. And then at any point, if you ever had an issue, you could always grab this shareable link and send it out too. That does the same thing as what we did with Google Classroom. That shareable link just sends that link that pulls the students into our system. But let's go ahead and hop into our reports just so we can see what that kiddo just did. So here he is, did a great job of listening, did his hypothesis well. He doesn't seem to understand how to target his independent variable, and he couldn't warrant his claim very well, which this makes sense, right? That's a really hard skill for students to learn. And this is interesting, like his claim, evidence, and reasoning, like we could be like, okay, it's actually fairly consistent with the rest of his science understanding, right? It's very mixed and he needs some assistance, but he's doing okay. Like, and then we could say, let's actually hop into, I opened this other account. I had interns do this for me so I could show you that later on in the school year, you would start to see all of your assignments would be here. And then if you want to click into one of your classes, you could click in here. And then I prefer to see things from the beginning of the year to the end. And this is pretty consistent with what we would want to see, right? That first tutorial, they tend to do artificially well because of assistance, but you can still see they still struggle with these other skills. Phase change, if you let them go a little bit more, phase change actually has 4 different virtual labs in that lab set. And, you know, you tend to see, okay, this is where these kiddos are struggling. Free fall's a little bit hard, but you start to see some improvement. And then forces in motion, this is typically what we would see. Between the 4th and the 6th lab is when kids really start to have a big growth in their skills. And then towards the end of the year, about the 8th or the 9th lab is when you start to see 100% proficiency for your students. And then I want to hop in so we can see what these sub-skills look like. So let's look at a kiddo who's kind of mixed here. Susie is a good example. So we would expect by the 4th lab that they should be doing pretty darn well with hypothesizing, but collecting data is an area where students tend to struggle. Analyzing data is an area where students tend to struggle a lot. And then explaining findings, or obviously writing, is a skill that comes along with practice. So what we found when we started using AI to assess student writing is that 50% of our students are being misassessed if we're using writing alone. So for 50% of our students, it's in a line, right? Their science understanding and their writing are perfectly in alignment. But we found that 25% of our students are really amazing scientists, but they can't write. So if we're using writing alone, then we think that they don't understand what they're doing, when in actuality, their science understanding is fantastic. And then 25% of our students are the reverse. As far as their science understanding, they're clueless, but boy, can they write. And as teachers, we intuitively know this, and it takes time to figure out who those students are, but we all know, we're like, oh yeah, this kid, yeah, science genius, can't write. This kid, oh, that kid does not get it. He always wants the answers, but boy, can he write, right? We start to figure that out through the school year. But this program was really great, and I loved using these tutorials right at the beginning of the school year because it gave me that little quick snapshot into who those students are, I could really quickly identify the really amazing writers, the really amazing scientists, and the kids that just need help across the board. And I could identify that very early in the school year, which was really helpful. So on Wednesdays, I actually dig into reports a lot more. This is really helpful data what administrators often want, or sometimes in the states they need, to monitor student growth. So this data is very, very helpful for that. We actually have student progress reports. These are really helpful at progress report time or to send out to parents or administrators. It's good to be able to show that growth over time. And I talk a lot more about this during my Wednesday webinar. And then it's nice to be able to get your own data and start to dig into that quite a bit more. And then let me see other things I wanted to show you. We talked about assigning that first lab, and then, your students tab. If you ever needed to, you could see whether your students connected with Google, change their password if you needed to. We just looked at reports. This is alerts, which will tell you if students are struggling. It's fantastic. If you're working in a synchronous environment, this will show you who is active and who is not. And it will show you alerts of who's struggling. If your class period ends and you need to clear all of your alerts for that class period, you can do that. If you're working in an asynchronous environment, you can just have this up anywhere, and you could be over here, lesson planning, grading, whatever. And then you could just hop back over here and be like, oh my gosh, Bobby's finally working on it, but boy, is he struggling. Maybe I should get a hold of him, or maybe just take a screenshot so that when I have a call with him later in the week, I can talk to him. Or if Bobby gets a hold of you and you're over here grading, you could really quickly hop over here and look for the alert and be able to help him with whatever he's struggling with. Like a lot of times, that screen I showed you with those trials, right? The kids can get so lost. And if they're scrolling up and down on their screen on a video call and their internet isn't the best, and you're like, you're making me dizzy just looking at this. So it's really helpful to just have the alerts, and our alerts literally just tell you what to say to Bobby. And like, Bobby, how many trials did you select to support your evidence, And so we're literally just giving you the text to say, and it's really, really helpful when your students are in another environment, or you just have a lot of them and you want to be able to help them with what they're struggling with really quickly. And then obviously your own settings, you can change at any time. So if you needed to manage your classroom sections or connect yourself to Google or whatever, you can do that. We have a number of resources. If you wanted to check those out, we have a YouTube channel where I'm creating 2 or 3 new videos every day. Our standards alignment, a lot of this information is also available embedded within our system, but sometimes it's just nice to have it all in one place to really quickly just look through it. This technology brief is fantastic to send to your tech department so that they can make sure that our system's going to work without issues. And then if you really quickly wanted to scan through, like if you look at these individual documents, they have all of the lab investigations that are within a lab set, and they'll tell you the objectives and the goals and the standards. All of that is within here. And then what else? Oh, let's hop back into the system and let me show you. Let's explore another lab. So let's say we finished our tutorials, right? The tutorials are progressive. So maybe all of your students will need to do tutorial 2 and maybe only some of them. And maybe all of them will need to do tutorial 3 and maybe only some of them. It's going to depend on your students and what your comfort level is. But each one of them should take them about 15 to 20 minutes unless you ask them to graph their data as well or reflect on their learning. But then hopefully they can hop into something else. So let's go ahead and do waves on a string. I haven't done this one for a while. So let's do this one. And I want to assign Rex the tutor because we have lots of evidence about how he helps students to get better faster. And I'm going to assign the multiple choice pre and post test just so you can see it. Definitely up to you whether you feel like you have time or not. And then I'm only going to assign it to my second period just because I don't want a bunch of those, but I just want to show you what this looks like. So now it's thinking, it's communicating with Google Classroom. And now I'm going to grab this link. Let's pretend like I put it in Google Classroom. And let's pretend like I'm following the link from Google Classroom because I want you to see what it looks like for students when they access their second activity. So imagine they literally just click on the link from Google Classroom. This is what happens for them. If they're connected to Google, it's literally that simple. They're in Google Classroom, they click on the link, and we like throw them straight into their next activity. So again, they get an introduction, but not an introduction to Inq-ITS. That's only available with the tutorials. And then they get a pre-lab. Don't judge my science skills here. I'm not going to read these questions. Basically, we've stolen standardized test questions from around the country. Only our graphic designer is amazing. And so he creates some really fantastic visuals for students to have practice with these skills. And, you know, they just need practice with that sometimes. And sometimes you might be like, I don't have time for that. Because the bulk of, you know, what we really care about is assessing their science practices. The multiple choice are just kind of like extra if it works. So hopefully they say length of the string is going to increase, and hopefully they say wave speed, but let's pretend like I say length of the string. And then this is Rex the tutor, and he's going to help me because he's going to help me get better. So hopefully then I say the wave speed is going to, let's just say, increase. Whatever I put right here has no impact whatsoever on my score, because we want to look to see that students understand their science practice, not that I correctly understand the science relationship there. Because now they have time to investigate it and learn. This is where they investigate and learn. And the reason I wanted to show this lab is because, well, I love it. It's very visual to me, like so much fun for students to do. And I love how this really helps students. And then Rex will pop up if I'm off base, be like, can I help you? I actually have some music teachers who use this lab now. I had music teachers in the spring who were like, I want to use it. What am I supposed to be doing? Oh, length. Right, okay.
Yeah, I'm on a webinar.
I did not have to do it. I just let you know.
Okay, but I know. It's fine. I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Okay, length of the string is going to increase. And then if they say my wave speed increased, and they always want to say supports my hypothesis, and let's say they wanted to choose all their trials, right? Then Rex is going to pop up and he's going to help them. Okay, so he first wants to help me get down to just the ones where I only changed my string length and nothing else. And then he's going to start to help me with this section back up here, which is the claim section. So he wants me to recognize that changing the length of the string does not impact my wave speed. Still just the speed of sound in air. So I'm going to have to say it made no change, and that refutes my hypothesis. And then I can move on to here, and I'm going to get out of here just so I can show you. So what I did, because notice we just finished one lab investigation. In the tutorials, they only get one lab investigation, but in these other labs, they can get 3 or 4 different lab investigations in a set. So what I did is I would put a big red marker right here, and maybe even a little like clip art stop sign, and be like, stop here on Tuesday. On Tuesday, we're going to do this, and then we're going to stop, and then I want you to do your reading or whatever. And then maybe on Thursday, we do lab 2, and that's it, and then stop. And then maybe, you know, next Wednesday, we do lab 3 and the post lab, and then we're done. But I found it really helpful to break this up, because when I had my students do all of this in one class period, by the time they got to lab 3, their writing was junk. It was awful. Their brains were just toast, and their post-lab scores were almost always lower than their pre-lab scores. And it makes sense. Doing all of that claim evidence reasoning, especially if you're looking at the rubric and you're really trying, it's just too much for their brains. So it's good to just do a little bit and then have them stop. Just so you know, we are planning to allow you to break this up, and we will at some point in the near future allow you to do that in our system. We're just hope you can give us some grace. Through this summer, rather than prioritizing this, we prioritized keeping the system up despite a gigantic increase in student usage. So we can now support tens of thousands of students all logging on at the exact same time without crashing. And that's the priority right now. So even if they only do the first lab, they can already see their scores. So, you could totally be like, hey, I need you to complete the first lab and I need you to grab a screenshot that shows this. That's what I need. And then they could be done with that first goal. They can even see their work for just that first goal. So that's really, really handy. And so they could even graph just that first goal. So let's pretend like I'm done there as a student. So let me come back over here as a teacher. And when I refresh, I would be able to see my work. So, okay. Do you have any questions?
I did go through like one or two of these myself, so I did see a lot, but now I understand like, how to use it and what it's there for and things like that. So that's really good. The thing I just wanted to kind of get re-explained is at the very beginning when you said, because I was, I'm just coming off my day.
Yeah, no worries.
Them joining, so right now, all I have is all my kids have joined my Google Classroom.
Right.
So now what do they have to do separately or differently to join this?
Okay, so it's really what you're doing is you are assigning to them. So when you say, if you assign Advanced Tutorial 1, that goes to their Google Classes, right? And then you would.
Do they need to do anything special? Do I need to do anything special?
You're just assigning in your system. So you assign it, then you go to Google Classroom. It will be a draft. You make whatever directions you want to make.
Right. Okay.
And
that was a draft.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you've never seen the draft, it's up at the top on classwork. It's in light gray instead of in black.
Yeah, I had that. So thank you.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So just modify it. And then when they follow the link, it's going to ask them if they want to make an account, and you say yes, and then click on Google. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Just the Google button.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. No, it's so much easier that way. That's why I thought this was like great, because you could just, anything we can work through Google is going to make their lives a lot easier, because, the spring was chaotic for them.
Yes.
Chaotic for us, but chaotic for them, because I felt bad for them. They were like all over the place.
Yeah. And once they make their account the first time, like I showed you how when they go the second time, it almost feels like it's part of Google Classroom, because the second time it's just like, whew, boom.
It just goes
there.
right there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that looked seamless. Okay. Very good. And if I put like you said with the stop sign, if I do like a clipboard thing, they're going to see that on.
No, you would want to put that in your directions.
The directions. Okay. That's what I was going to say. Like, I didn't think they were going to be able to see that. So, okay. So it'll be something that I have to say separately.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if you feel like your students need lots of extra assistance and you want to have an example student account so you can show them, whether you're doing a video, like you could do it once and take a video of yourself or whatever. If you want that example of being a student, you just want to make sure you use a different browser. So if you use Chrome primarily as a teacher, hop over to Firefox or something so that you can pretend to be a student in a different browser. Because like if I take this and I copy this link and see I'm in Chrome, our system knows I'm a teacher. So if I follow a student link as a teacher, I'm just
get all the options.
I'm still my teacher account. This is just a preview.
Right.
Yeah, it's just taking me to a preview and that's it. So
very good. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to just see how it goes with the kids, and and then I'll be in touch with any questions if I have them. The other teacher in our school couldn't I guess they had something going on down in the middle school. So she just
Okay.
told me she couldn't join, but I'll talk to her about this and all that. So,
Okay. I just want to make sure you realize that all of these are free to every teacher. Use them, whatever you'd like, use them. And then,
Okay.
and then the additional labs, you get one free. So whichever lab you choose, you get that one for free. And we say labs, but we really mean lab sets. So like if you
Right.
chose energy and air resistance, that is 3 different labs in there. And then any purchases are on top of that. So like if a teacher purchases 4 additional labs, that's all of the tutorials, their free lab, and 4 more. And
Okay.
and I'm trying to get if I'm trying to get this so that you can just assign any of these with math without it impacting your number of free labs. But in case they don't, fix that because it shouldn't, any of these with math are in beta, so it shouldn't count against your number of labs. But if they don't get that fixed before you want to use any of these with math in them, just let me know and I can load them for you. I can't assign them to your, like link them to your Google Classes, obviously, because I don't have your
Right.
your Google integration, but I could assign, like if you had 5 class periods, I could assign this math lab to your 5 class periods and you could link it in your system.
Okay.
But yeah, all of those. And we're launching 8 more of these in the next few months. So we're
Oh, wow.
launching 8 more of these beta versions of with math. So
Okay, great.
yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very
Wonderful.
much.
Yeah, no problem. It was this help button right here is super, super helpful if you have any questions or need assistance. And please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or if you need anything. And I hope you have a good day.
You too. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye.
All right. See ya. Bye.